Hello and welcome to our channel. We are so happy to have you here with us. If you're looking to improve your English speaking skills and gain more confidence, you've come to the right place. Whether you're just starting out or already at an intermediate level, we're here to guide you with practical tips, fun lessons, and real-life examples to help you speak English like a pro.
Hello, everyone. How are you doing today? We're so excited to have you here with us on this special episode of our podcast. I hope you're ready for some great learning and fun conversation. I'm Agnes, and I'm here with my wonderful co-host, Jasper.
Hey, everyone, I'm Jasper, and I can't wait to dive into today's topic with you all. It's a big one, and I know so many of you are going to find it really helpful. Whether you're listening while you're out on a walk, doing some chores, or just relaxing at home, thank you for tuning in. We're so glad you're here.
Yes, thank you so much for being here. We truly appreciate your support. Today's episode is all about something that a lot of you have asked us about: how to speak advanced English fluently. This is such an exciting topic, and it's something that many English learners dream about, right? Imagine being able to speak English smoothly, confidently, and like a native speaker.
Exactly, it sounds amazing, doesn't it? And I'm sure a lot of you are thinking, how can I get there? How can I speak more fluently? Well, don't worry, we're going to break it down for you. You don't have to be perfect to speak advanced English. It's about progress, not perfection. And that's what we're going to help you with today.
That's such a good point. Jasper, speaking fluently doesn't mean you have to know every word in the dictionary or never make mistakes. It's all about feeling comfortable with the language and being able to express yourself in different situations. We want to show you that speaking English fluently is something you can achieve step by step. It's not as hard as it seems.
Exactly, Agnes. And the best part is, no matter what level you're at, whether you're just starting to learn or if you've been studying English for a while, there are strategies and techniques that can help you improve. The goal today is to make this whole process clearer, easier, and even fun.
Right. And before we go deeper into this topic, we just want to say a huge thank you to everyone who's been following our podcast. We're really grateful for your support, and we hope that today's episode gives you the tools and motivation to take your English to the next level. So, let's jump in.
Yes, let's get started. So, Agnes, let's begin with the first step to speaking advanced English fluently. What do you think is the most important thing to focus on when trying to improve fluency?
Great question, Jasper. In my opinion, the most important thing to focus on is confidence. I know this might sound simple, but if you can be confident when speaking, you're already halfway there. It's natural to feel nervous when speaking a second language, but the more you practice and the more you put yourself in situations where you have to speak, the more comfortable you'll feel. Default text.
I completely agree with you. Confidence is everything. I think a lot of people hold back because they're afraid of making mistakes, but here's the thing. Mistakes are part of the process. They're not something to be afraid of. The more you speak, the more mistakes you'll make, and the better you'll get at correcting them.
Exactly. And if you try to speak more often, even when you're not perfect, you'll start to notice something amazing. You'll begin to sound more natural. You won't have to pause and think so much about every word you say. Speaking becomes like a flow. It feels easy and natural, just like when you're speaking your own language.
Right, Agnes, and to build that confidence, you need to put yourself out there. Speak as much as possible, whether it's with friends, family, or even language exchange partners. If you're too shy to speak with others, try speaking to yourself. It sounds funny, but talking to yourself in English can really help you practice and get used to the language.
I love that, Jasper. Talking to yourself can be a great exercise, especially when you're just starting to feel more comfortable. You can practice saying things out loud, like describing your day or talking about what you're doing. The more you practice, the more you'll get used to forming sentences in English. And soon enough, it'll feel like second nature.
Absolutely. And I think another thing that helps with building confidence is listening. The more you listen to native speakers or even other learners, the more you'll get used to how the language sounds in different situations. Listening to English being spoken naturally can help you improve your own speaking because you get to hear how people connect words, use expressions, and speak fluently.
That's a fantastic point. Listening is key to understanding the flow of the language. It teaches you things like intonation, stress, and how to use certain phrases in everyday conversations. For example, you might hear someone say, "What's up?" instead of "How are you?" That's a more casual and natural way of speaking. You might not find that kind of information in a textbook, but you'll pick it up by listening to real conversations.
Exactly, and it's not just about listening to English in formal settings. You can listen to podcasts, watch movies, or even enjoy some fun YouTube videos. The more variety, the better. And you'll start to notice all kinds of new expressions, slang, and the rhythm of natural speech.
Yes, and I think another way to improve fluency is by practicing speaking out loud every day. You don't have to have a conversation with someone to practice speaking. Just reading aloud, repeating sentences you hear in movies or podcasts, or even using language learning apps that help with speaking, these all help you improve your fluency.
Definitely, it's about repetition and exposure. The more you hear and speak English, the more comfortable and fluent you'll become. And speaking of repetition, let's not forget about shadowing. Shadowing is when you listen to something in English and then repeat it right after you hear it. This technique helps you improve your pronunciation, rhythm, and even your intonation. It's a fun and active way to learn.
Exactly. Shadowing is one of the best techniques to help you sound more natural. So, to recap this first part, building confidence is the first step to fluency. The more confident you are, the easier it becomes to speak English without worrying about making mistakes. Also, listening and practicing speaking every day will help you improve faster.
Yes, and trust us, as you keep practicing, you'll start to notice big improvements. So, let's dive into the next key to speaking advanced English fluently.
Thanks, Jasper. So, as we continue on from where we left off, we were talking about how practicing and building confidence is crucial for becoming fluent in English. And the next step I want to talk about is something that really goes hand in hand with confidence: vocabulary. Now, you might be thinking, okay, Agnes, I already know a lot of words in English, and I'm sure you do. But when we talk about speaking advanced English, it's not just about knowing lots of words, it's about knowing how to use those words naturally and accurately in different situations. And this is where things can get really exciting.
I love this, Agnes. Vocabulary is such a powerful tool when it comes to fluency. But how can people at the intermediate level improve their vocabulary? Is it just about memorizing lists of words?
Great question, Jasper. And no, it's definitely not just about memorizing lists of words. I think the best way to improve your vocabulary is by learning words in context. What I mean by that is, instead of learning words in isolation, try to learn them in sentences or in situations where they would naturally be used. For example, you might learn the word enthusiastic, but it's even better if you learn how to use it in a sentence like, "I'm really enthusiastic about learning English." Or, "She was so enthusiastic during the meeting." This way, you're not just remembering the word, you're also practicing how to use it correctly in real conversations.
That's such a good point, Agnes. And another thing I would add is that learning synonyms, words that have similar meanings, can be super helpful. For example, instead of always saying good, you can use excellent, fantastic, amazing, or impressive. This adds variety to your speech and helps you sound more like a native speaker.
Exactly, Jasper. And while learning new words is important, we also have to talk about something that might sound a bit tricky at first: collocations. Collocations are words that are commonly used together, and they're something you'll hear a lot in natural conversations. For example, you don't say "make a photo," you say "take a photo," Or instead of saying very delicious, native speakers would say absolutely delicious. When you learn these common word combinations, your speech will sound much more natural and fluent.
I think that's something a lot of learners overlook. Learning the right combinations of words can make a huge difference. And you know, Agnes, one of my favorite ways to build vocabulary is by reading and listening to things that interest you, whether that's books, podcasts, movies, or even social media. When you read or listen to things that are exciting or fun to you, you naturally start to pick up new words. Plus, you'll remember them much better because they're connected to something you enjoy.
I couldn't agree more, Jasper. When you enjoy what you're listening to or reading, learning new words becomes so much easier. And this is a great way to build a more advanced vocabulary because you're exposing yourself to words and phrases that you might not find in a textbook. This also brings us to something really important, contextual learning. You can learn a word in one situation, but it's important to remember that words can have different meanings depending on how they're used. For example, the word run can mean to move quickly on foot, but it can also mean to manage something, as in I run a small business. By seeing and hearing words in different contexts, you get a deeper understanding of their meanings.
Yes, and another way to build your vocabulary is by actively using the new words you learn. Don't just let them sit in your head, use them in your own sentences, write them down in a journal, or try to use them in a conversation. This active usage will help cement the words in your memory and make them easier to recall when you need them.
Right? And here's a little trick I love to share with people: word families. Many words in English come from the same root, and if you learn one word, you can often figure out other related words. For example, if you learn the word decide, you can easily add decision, decisive, deciding, and indecision to your vocabulary. Learning words in families helps you expand your vocabulary in a more connected way, so you're not learning random words without any context.
That's such a smart technique, Agnes. Word families really help to make the learning process more efficient. And as you learn more words, don't be afraid to challenge yourself. Try using those words in conversations, even if you're not 100% sure you're using them perfectly. That's the best way to really make them stick and sound natural. The more you practice, the more fluent you'll become.
Absolutely, Jasper. And speaking of using words in real conversations, another tip I have for you is to pay attention to phrasal verbs. Phrasal verbs are really important in English, and they can often sound tricky. But they're extremely common in everyday speech, so mastering them will make a huge difference in your fluency. For example, instead of saying I need to leave, you could say I need to take off. Or instead of I'll explain later, you could say I'll fill you in later. Learning these little phrases can make you sound much more fluent.
Great point, Agnes. Phrasal verbs really are an important part of sounding natural in English. And while we're on the topic of sounding natural, let's talk about intonation and stress. These are two things that really make a difference when you're speaking. Intonation refers to the rise and fall of your voice when speaking, while stress is about which parts of a sentence you emphasize. Both of these things can change the meaning of a sentence. For example, if you say I'm so happy, but stress the word happy, it shows excitement. But if you say I'm so happy, stressing the word so, it shows even more excitement. Getting the hang of intonation and stress will make your speech sound much more natural and fluent.
Yes, stress and intonation are so important. And when you start practicing them, it really makes a difference in how people understand you. If your intonation is off, your listener might not catch your meaning. So, pay attention to how native speakers stress certain words in a sentence and try to copy that. It's a great way to sound more fluent.
And finally, let's talk about speaking practice. It's one thing to learn vocabulary and grammar, but you have to use the language to really get fluent. Whether it's speaking with a friend, participating in a language exchange, or just talking to yourself, it's essential to practice speaking as much as you can. The more you speak, the easier it will be to use the vocabulary and phrases you've learned. Plus, It will help you develop your listening skills, as you'll become more familiar with the way words are used in real conversations.
Absolutely, Jasper. And to wrap up, remember this: improving your vocabulary isn't about memorizing every word in the dictionary. It's about using words in context, learning synonyms, collocations, and phrasal verbs, and practicing regularly. The more you expose yourself to the language and use it, the more fluent you'll become. Keep challenging yourself, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. They're part of the learning process.
That's right, Agnes. And by focusing on these areas, confidence, vocabulary, and speaking practice, you're setting yourself up for success. Stay consistent, and over time, you'll notice just how much more comfortable and fluent you become in English.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode and found these tips helpful. Keep practicing, stay confident, and remember that fluency is a journey. We're here to support you every step of the way.
Thank you so much for listening, and we can't wait to continue this journey with you. Keep up the hard work, and we'll see you in the next one.
Thanks, Jasper. I love everything you said so far, and I hope our listeners are feeling more motivated and ready to take their English to the next level. Now that we've covered building confidence and improving vocabulary, let's dive into something that will make a huge difference in your journey to speaking advanced English fluently: grammar. I know grammar can be intimidating, right? But trust me, it's not as scary as it seems, and it plays an important role in speaking fluently. The key is to understand grammar in a way that helps you communicate naturally, not in a way that makes you feel like you have to memorize rules all the time. So, how do we do that? Let's talk about it.
Yes, Agnes, grammar is such a critical part of speaking fluently, but I think a lot of learners tend to get caught up in the rules. It's like they feel that if they don't get the grammar perfect, they won't sound fluent. But I agree with you, it's more about knowing how to use grammar in a natural, practical way. So, how can learners focus on grammar without getting overwhelmed by all the rules?
Great question, Jasper. Here's the thing about grammar: it's not about being perfect. It's about knowing how to use the right structures so that your message is clear. You don't have to use every single rule perfectly, but you should understand the key ones and practice using them in real conversations. And here's a tip: practice makes perfect. Instead of focusing on learning every grammar rule, try to focus on using what you know in everyday situations. For example, one area of grammar that's very important for fluency is the use of tenses. English has many tenses, and it's easy to get confused about when to use which one. But once you understand the basics of the most common tenses like the present simple, present continuous, past simple, and future tenses, you'll be able to start building more complex sentences and expressing yourself with more variety.
Yes, tenses are key to being understood correctly, but you don't have to worry about knowing every possible tense right away. Start with the basics. For instance, present simple is used for regular actions or facts, like I work every day or she lives in London. Present continuous is for actions happening right now, like I am speaking with you or they are studying English. Just knowing the basic idea of when to use each tense will give you the foundation to start forming more complex.
Exactly, Jasper. And don't forget about sentence structure. In English, sentence structure is really important. When we speak, we usually follow the subject-verb-object pattern. For example, I subject like verb pizza object. Once you get comfortable with this basic structure, you can start adding more details like adjectives, adverbs, or prepositional phrases to make your sentences more advanced. One of the easiest ways to practice sentence structure is by reading simple sentences and then changing them in different ways. For example, start with a sentence like I watch movies, then try changing it to I watch movies every weekend or I've been watching movies lately. By doing this, you're getting used to more complex structures and tenses, but without making it feel like a chore.
I love that, Agnes. That's such a great way to expand your sentence building skills without feeling overwhelmed. And another important aspect of grammar is modal verbs. These are words like can, should, might, and must. They help us express possibility, necessity, ability, and advice, and they're used in everyday conversations. For example, I can speak English, or you should study more to improve. Learning how to use these modal verbs in your speech can really make you sound more natural and confident.
Absolutely, Jasper. Modal verbs are really powerful because they allow you to express so much in just one word. For example, I must go now is stronger than simply saying I need to go now. It adds urgency or necessity. Another example is you might want to try that new restaurant, which suggests a suggestion or possibility. Mastering modal verbs is another step toward sounding more advanced in English. But grammar isn't just about memorizing rules or tenses. It's about being able to use them flexibly in conversation. That's why practice is so important. One of my favorite ways to practice grammar is through speaking. Try to have conversations with someone where you focus on using a specific grammar rule you're working on. Or, if you're by yourself, you can repeat a sentence several times, changing small parts of it. This helps you internalize the grammar in a natural way, and soon enough, you'll find yourself using it without thinking.
Exactly, Agnes. And here's something that I think really helps with grammar: listening. The more you listen to native speakers, the more you'll start to hear grammar structures used naturally. When you listen to conversations, whether it's through movies, TV shows, or podcasts, try to pay attention to how the grammar is being used. For instance, you might hear someone say, "I was just thinking about you," which uses the past continuous tense. Listening like this helps you understand how grammar works in real-life conversations.
That's such a great point, Jasper. Listening helps you hear how grammar flows naturally. And by hearing it used in context, you can start to understand when it's appropriate to use certain tenses or structures. It's like you're learning grammar without even realizing it because it becomes part of the conversation. And one last thing I want to touch on regarding grammar is sentence variety. As you continue to grow in your English, it's important to start using different kinds of sentences: simple, compound, and complex sentences. A simple sentence is something like "I like ice cream." A compound sentence combines two simple sentences with a conjunction like "I like ice cream" and "I also like cake." And a complex sentence has an independent clause and a dependent clause, like "I'll go to the party if I finish my homework." By mixing up your sentence types, you'll sound more fluent and advanced. Don't be afraid to experiment with different sentence structures in your conversations. The more you practice, the easier it will be to express yourself in a more sophisticated way.
That's such an important tip, Agnes. By using a mix of sentence types, you're making your speech sound more dynamic and fluent. And the beauty of it is, the more you practice these things, the more automatic they'll become. You won't need to stop and think about grammar rules every time you speak. It'll flow naturally, and you'll be able to focus more on the message you want to convey, rather than getting caught up in the grammar.
Exactly, Jasper. So to wrap up this section on grammar, remember that you don't have to be perfect. It's about understanding the basic structures and practicing them in real conversations. Grammar helps you communicate clearly and effectively, and the more you use it in context, the more natural and fluent you'll sound. And don't forget about listening and sentence variety. It's all about making your speech more interesting and dynamic.
That's right, Agnes. And once you start feeling more comfortable with grammar, you'll find that it opens up so many more doors for you in terms of fluency. You'll be able to express your ideas more clearly and with confidence.
So, keep practicing those grammar structures, listen to native speakers, and use what you learn in real conversations. The more you do this, the more fluent you'll become. And remember, don't be afraid to make mistakes. They're just part of the journey.
That's exactly it. Keep going, and before you know it, you'll be speaking English with the fluency you've always dreamed of.